The maestro's silent symphony. The night Zidane conquered the Bernabeu without scoring. November 19th, 2000. Santiago Bernabeu Stadium. El Clásico. The most anticipated football match on earth. And Zinedine Zidane was about to play in it for the first time, wearing the white of Real Madrid. But what happened that night defied everything the world thought they knew about football greatness. Zidane didn't score. He didn't assist. He didn't create any moment that would appear on highlight reels or newspaper front pages the next morning. Yet, by the time the final whistle blew on Real Madrid's 2-0 victory, 80,000 Madridistas were chanting his name. Barcelona's players looked like they'd been hypnotized, and football itself had been redefined. This is the story of the most dominant individual performance in Clásico history. The night a conductor proved that the most beautiful music isn't always about the notes you play, but about the silences between them. When Zidane signed for Real Madrid in the summer of 2001 for a world record €75 million, the pressure wasn't just about justifying the fee. It was about understanding what the white shirt truly meant. This wasn't just any club. This was Real Madrid. And this wasn't just any match. This was El Clásico against Barcelona. For months, Madrid fans had dreamed about this moment. How would their new Galactico perform against their eternal rivals? Would he crumble under the pressure of the world's biggest stage, or would he rise to meet it? But as Zidane walked out of the tunnel that night, he carried something heavier than expectation. He carried the weight of history. Every Real Madrid legend had faced this test. Di Stefano had conquered it. Puskas had mastered it. Now it was his turn to prove he belonged in that pantheon. The Barcelona team waiting for him was formidable. Rivaldo at his peak, a young Xavi beginning to show his brilliance, Pep Guardiola still orchestrating from midfield. They had come to the Bernabeu not just to win, but to humiliate Madrid's expensive new toy. They had no idea they were about to witness a masterclass in football physics. From the first whistle, something extraordinary began to unfold. Zidane didn't sprint toward goal or attempt spectacular dribbles. Instead, he positioned himself in spaces that seemed insignificant, until Barcelona realized that every meaningful play was flowing through those exact spaces. He was like a chess grandmaster who controls the entire board by controlling just one strategic square. Every Barcelona attack had to go around him. Every Madrid move started with him. Yet, to the casual observer, he seemed to be doing nothing at all. It was like he had installed himself as the heartbeat of the match. Barcelona midfielder Xavi later recalled, "We knew where he was every second, but we couldn't do anything about it. He was controlling time itself." This was Zidane's genius at its most refined. Not the flashy skills that had made him famous, but something far more profound. He was conducting an orchestra of 21 other players, and they didn't even realize they were following his rhythm. While Barcelona's superstars tried to create magic individually, Zidane was making magic through multiplication. Every pass he made elevated the teammate who received it. Every movement he made created space for someone else to exploit. Every touch he took slowed down or sped up the game to Madrid's advantage. Luis Figo, Madrid's right winger, suddenly found himself in perfect positions he'd never discovered before. Raúl, the captain, began making runs with supernatural timing. Roberto Carlos attacked from left back, with the confidence of someone who knew the ball would find him exactly when he needed it. Playing with Zizou was like having a football GPS, Figo later explained. He knew where you were going to be before you knew it yourself. The ball would arrive exactly when you were ready for it, exactly where you could do the most damage. This wasn't just individual brilliance, this was collective elevation. Zidane was taking 10 good players and transforming them into one great team. As the match progressed, something fascinating happened to Barcelona. They began playing not their game, but Zidane's game. They started rushing passes to match his tempo, then slowing down when he slowed down. They began watching him instead of watching the ball. Guardiola, Barcelona's experienced midfielder, found himself in a private duel with someone who seemed to be playing by different rules. Every time Pep tried to speed up Barcelona's passing, Zidane would intercept not the ball, but the rhythm itself, forcing the Catalans to restart their build-up. He was in my head, Guardiola admitted years later. I knew I was a good player, but he made me feel like I was playing a different sport. He wasn't just better, he was operating on a different level of understanding. Rivaldo, Barcelona's most dangerous attacking threat, became increasingly frustrated as he found himself isolated. Not because Madrid was marking him closely, but because Zidane's positioning was subtly cutting off the supply lines that fed the Brazilians' brilliance. When Madrid's first goal came in the 38th minute, Zidane wasn't anywhere near the action, except that he was everywhere in the action. The goal started with a pass that Zidane had made 20 seconds earlier, creating the space that Luis Figo would eventually exploit. The second goal, scored by Raúl in the 68th minute, was even more typically Zidane. He received the ball in midfield, took one touch to shift it slightly, and played what looked like a routine pass to Roberto Carlos. But that routine pass arrived at exactly the moment when Barcelona's defense was shifting, exactly where Carlos could cross, and exactly when Raúl would be making his run. People always asked why I didn't score or assist that night, Zidane later reflected, but I was involved in everything. Just not in the way that shows up in statistics. With 10 minutes remaining and Real Madrid leading 2-0, something unprecedented happened. As Zidane collected a simple pass in midfield and turned with elegant precision, the entire Bernabeu rose to its feet in spontaneous applause. He hadn't done anything spectacular. He hadn't beaten 3 defenders or attempted an impossible pass. He had simply controlled the ball and moved with it in a way that somehow encapsulated everything beautiful about football. The balance, the timing, the perfect marriage of intention and execution. Even Barcelona fans in the stadium found themselves clapping. It was impossible not to. They were witnessing something that transcended tribal loyalty. Pure football artistry. "I've never seen anything like it," wrote Spanish journalist Sid Lowe. 80,000 people applauding a simple touch because they recognized they were watching someone who understood football better than anyone else in the stadium. In the Barcelona dressing room after the match, the silence was deafening. These were proud men, superstars who had dominated football for years, but they had just been outplayed by someone who seemed to be playing a completely different game. "We weren't beaten by Real Madrid," Rivaldo told his teammates. "We were beaten by one man who made Real Madrid better than they are." Guardiola, who would later become one of football's greatest coaches, was more specific. "I learned more about football watching Zidane tonight than I learned in 10 years of playing. He showed me that the game isn't about what you do with the ball. It's about what you make possible for others." Even Barcelona coach Lorenzo Serra Ferrer admitted defeat not just tactically, but philosophically. "We prepared for every Real Madrid player except one. We couldn't prepare for someone who changes the reality of football itself." What exactly had Zidane done that night? Football analysts would spend weeks trying to decode his performance. The statistics were almost mundane. 67 passes completed, 94% accuracy, 0 goals, 0 assists, 3 tackles, 2 interceptions. But the statistics told only the smallest part of the story. Through video analysis, experts discovered something remarkable. Zidane had touched the ball 89 times, and on 84 of those touches, he had improved Real Madrid's tactical position. not through spectacular individual moves, but through tiny adjustments, receiving the ball with his body positioned to make the next pass easier, moving 2 steps to create space for a teammate, making a simple pass at exactly the right pace to bypass Barcelona's pressing rhythm. He was like a master editor working on a complex manuscript, explained tactical analyst Jonathan Wilson. Every small change improved the entire text. The performance had immediate consequences throughout Spanish football. Barcelona, humiliated by their inability to cope with one player, began restructuring their entire approach to midfield play. Other teams started studying Zidane's positioning more intensively than they studied opposition tactics. But the broader impact was even more profound. Young players across Spain began to understand that football excellence wasn't just about goals and assists. It was about understanding the geometry of the game, the psychology of teammates, the rhythm of 90 minutes. That night changed how I thought about football, said a young Xavi, who would later become a master of similar subtle dominance. I realized that the most important player on the pitch might not always be the most obvious one. For decades, football fans had debated what constituted a perfect game. Was it a hat-trick? A goalkeeper's clean sheet with crucial saves? Zidane's performance against Barcelona redefined perfection itself. He had played a perfect game, without a single moment of traditional brilliance. Instead, he had achieved something more difficult. He had made everyone else on the pitch play better football. Goals are temporary, Zidane explained to confused journalists after the match. But when you improve how your teammates think and move, that effect lasts the entire game. That's how you win El Clásico. In the weeks following the match, Madrid newspapers began calling it La Noche del Conquistador, the night of the conquistador. Not because Zidane had conquered through force, but because he had conquered through understanding. He had taken the most intense rivalry in football, the most passionate stadium atmosphere in Spain, the highest pressure environment in the sport, and transformed it into his personal laboratory. Barcelona hadn't just lost a match, they had been comprehensively outfought. We signed Zidane to beat Barcelona, admitted Florentino Perez. But he didn't just beat them, he made them irrelevant for 90 minutes. That's not talent, that's genius. The performance became legendary not for what it contained, but for what it proved. That football's greatest art form isn't the spectacular, but the sublime. That true mastery isn't about what you can do with the ball, but what you can make others do without it. Young players began studying Zidane not for his tricks or his goals, but for his positioning. Coaches started teaching not just individual skills, but collective intelligence. The game itself became more sophisticated because one player had shown how sophisticated it could be. Every footballer dreams of scoring the perfect goal, reflected Spanish football philosopher George Valdano. But Zidane showed us something more beautiful. The perfect game where you don't need to score because you've already won in every other way possible.